from George Mason. Both of them wrote very, very excellent articles in this. But Shaykh Abdullah bin Bayya says in his paper, he says that we have to take into account historical developments and the social and human context. He says developments and changes over time as well as contemporary societal realities present a set of circumstances that differ from those in which the particularized rulings were originally revealed. Social context remains the premise upon which we determine the suitability of a legal ruling's application. In other words, text and context cannot be separate. And this is the traditional juristic methodology of our civilization. Hence, our context today demands a novel reading of sacred law in light of the foundational and universal building blocks of legislation. In addition, we must view all of the political, social, economic, scientific, and technological realities. Today, we have international accords, borders, weapons of mass destruction, and religious, cultural, as well as multi-ethnic communities in both Muslim-majority lands and those beyond. In our context today, social contracts have replaced tribal and religious allegiances, and in the international domain, the domination of superpowers has been replaced by the interdependence of nations with international treaties and accords that for all intents and purposes hold up relatively well. Globalization has emerged as an ongoing reality of our world and not just a fleeting trend. And although it is framed in a way that allows one to take it or leave it, in reality, it compels itself on us all. This current context impacts not only in the international institutions and laws, but also the continued appropriateness of the sacred texts, regardless of their original reasons and circumstances in which they were revealed. And here is the important point for me. In light of this, no room for romanticizing history remains. We must abandon all delusions of empire for the Muslim community and nostalgia for past military might and victory or what should have been done but was not. We must also abandon any and all aberrations and illusions that have currently framed the Muslim community as in opposition to humanity instead of remaining as it originally was, a contributor to the advancement and development of civilization. Our world no longer identifies itself in religious terms. Instead, it identifies itself through culture, personal and social interests, technologies, covenants, contracts, and treaties. But this does not mean that people are not devout and religious. Make no mistake about it. A mistaken diagnosis is fatal. The realities of our context today do not allow for the old categories of religion. As the world today is multicultural, its contribution of pluralism itself a virtue provides immense opportunities for humanity to achieve a lasting and natural state of peace. And in conclusion, he identifies the social values of Islam. It's very interesting because in the Catholic tradition, St. Thomas Aquinas also deals with the social virtues, and many of them actually dovetail with the Islamic. The first is gentleness and benevolence. The Quran says he does not forbid you to deal gently and justly with anyone who has not fought you for your faith, nor driven you out of your homes. God loves the just. 60:88, verse 8. The second is dignity. And the Quran, interestingly enough, differentiates between ontological dignity, which is the essential dignity of a human being. Just simply for being human, you have a dignity, irrespective of what you do and who you are. Even the worst criminal is entitled to ontological dignity. And that's just the dignity of being human. And this comes from a verse in the 17th chapter called Bani Israel or Isra. We have dignified the children of Adam and carried them by land and sea. The moral dignity, which is the second type of dignity, is in the 49th chapter of the Quran, where it says, Inna akramakum indallah atqakum, that the most dignified amongst you are the most conscientious, the most pious. That's moral dignity that's acquired. Ontological dignity is not earned. It's given to you by God by simply being a creature of God that's endowed with rationality and humanity. Third, cooperation, solidarity, and rectification. Help one another to do what is right and good. Do not help one another towards sin and hostility. Quran chapter 5, verse 2. Do not corrupt the earth after it has been set right. 7:56. Do not seek to spread corruption in the land, for God does not love those who do this. God knows those who spoil things and those who improve them. So cooperation, solidarity, and rectification. That verse, the first one of cooperating in goodness, was actually revealed concerning the polytheists of Mecca, to work with them. It wasn't revealed for the Muslims to cooperate with one another. Reconciliation. Make things right between you. 8:1. Human solidarity and interaction. People. We created you all from a single man and a single woman and made you into races and tribes so that you should get to know one another. In God's eyes, the most honored of you are the ones most mindful of God. And this is a basis of interaction between people, not dominance, as is found in the Hegelian dialectic that is predicated upon perpetual dominance based on the master-slave theory of Hegel. 6, wisdom. Whoever is given wisdom has been given much good, and only those with insight bear this in mind. Quran chapter 2, verse 269. The common weal. We will not deny those who work for rectitude their just rewards. So working for the common weal, common goodness. 8, being just with others. God commands to justice, doing good and generosity towards relatives, and he forbids what is shameful, blameworthy, and oppressive. He teaches you that you might take heed. Number 9, mercy. It was only as a mercy that you were sent. And this is why you have to have, if you have social justice, you also have to have social mercy. You can't, John Rawls, and I think Dr. Marsh will probably bring him up. He brought him up in his article. But John Rawls argues that the most important virtue of a society is justice. But the Muslims would argue that the most important is actually love. And Raghib Isfahani says, reiterating what Aristotle said, he says in his Akhlaq, he says, when you have love, people forego justice. And that's why a family is based on love. Because families oppress each other, but you're still family. And then peace, which peace and even higher principle and value remains lofty and in reality. O you who believe, enter wholeheartedly into a state of peace. And one of the things that's quoted a lot, no peace without justice. If you look at Dr. King's original statement, he actually said, there can be no justice without peace. And there can be no peace without justice. You have to see both together. If you say no peace without justice, we'll never have peace. It's just going to be conflict. And this is why the Kantian iteration, he differentiates between temporal peace and perpetual peace. No peace without justice is perpetual peace. But temporal peace is where you work for justice within the environment of peace. And finally, covenants. Fulfilling covenants is considered a sign of true faith. O you who believe, fulfill your obligations. If they seek help from you against religious persecution, it is your duty to help them. So these are some of the ideas that Shaykh Abdullah's introducing or reintroducing. And I will just say, he is not a modernist by any stretch. This is a man deeply steeped in tradition, and he's working from the tradition of the great Usuli scholars. Imam al-Qushayri, the great theologian and Sufi, said that the Usulis are the generals of this ummah. They're the people that give the strategy. Strategos is the Greek word for general. They're the ones that look down the road. So we have, inshallah, a wonderful conversation in store with some really exceptional scholars, Dr. March and Dr.